Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to another episode of the Gigi Report. I'm glad you're tuned in. We're excited to come back to you today. Now, Kenyans are witnessing an unusual volatility in the energy sector, with fuel prices having risen to some significantly high level at the moment, and that has created and generated a conversation. Some are blaming it on the national leadership, others are blaming it on a failure of economic policy, and many other explanations. And so today we're going to try and address ourselves, particularly we're going to focus on the leadership in these uncertain times. And so welcome to the Gigi Report. I have a guest today, Mr. Philip Mwangale. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good to have you here. All right, so as you all know, the Gigi Report is a platform where we discuss big, bold ideas, and we have honest conversations. And so today we're going to be as honest as we can. We're going to try and explore the matters of leadership in these crisis times, and my guest is here to help me with that. Now, I will begin by introducing my guest very briefly, then we're going to ask him to give us a little bit of his background, and then we get on to the other subjects. So my guest is Mr. Philip Mwangale. Mwangale is a leadership and governance consultant. He's a lawyer, and he's the managing partner for Avocat Global. I guess that's a firm of advocates, yes. And also Gibor Global Consultants. You will tell us more about that, about your consultancy thing. But I'm happy that you play in the field of governance and leadership, yes. And we can then have this conversation. Mm-hmm. So, Bwana Mwangale.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Let's begin with your background.
Mm-hmm.
I see you are in the legal profession. So what inspired you to go into the legal profession? And maybe you can also tell us how it all began.
Yes, as you mentioned, my name is Philip Mwangale. I am born again first. Christ is Lord and Savior. And I must underscore Lord because I am continually led by Christ, even in the things that I do, including in the profession.
Yes.
What inspired me to do law? For a very long time, I have been inspired by order and justice.
Okay.
And law was it was, as a matter of course, something that I thought I should do, mm-hmm. Because it is a great avenue to make sure that there is order in society and to make sure that we have a just society.
Okay.
So from the time I got into high school, that was my pursuit,
okay.
Order and justice.
Okay.
And my life purpose is to establish order out of chaos.
Okay.
And so law was the thing that would lead me to do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Along the way, I also discovered that in pursuit of my life purpose, mm-hmm. Leadership and governance is at the core of that.
Okay.
And so aside from being a lawyer by training, I am also a leadership and governance consultant, and that involves, helping people and organizations, businesses and companies think strategically around the things they do, helping them chart a purposeful course, because it is not just enough to exist. You must be working towards something. So I work with individuals and organizations to make sure that they are living purpose and living lives of purpose. Yes.
Very good. Yeah, and of course you're obviously in the younger generation of up and coming leaders of this country, and I'm very happy to have you here because your generation, maybe I could consider myself in a different generation. I'm happy that there are people like you that really want to engage matters and play, especially in that space of leadership and governance, because I clearly think that there is something missing, because what I see is people always complaining and asking questions and puzzling over matters, and not many people are willing to engage matters very seriously. Okay, so tell us, what are you, in terms of your academic background? I think you're doing a master's.
Yes.
Yeah, so tell us, what are you studying in your master's?
I decided to, because of my purpose, I decided to enlarge my capacity and improve my capacity towards leadership and governance, and so I'm doing a Master's of Arts in Leadership at Park University. That is something I have decided to do to improve my capacity in the area of leadership. That, in addition to other small trainings and courses that I have designed myself and purpose to do to improve myself. And it is important to keep building our capacity around the areas that God has called us into. So that, in addition to also improving and increasing my capacity in the area of law. And we are constantly developing and growing.
That's true. Yes. That's true. Actually, that's very important to develop ourselves so that then we can understand matters and, become better at, articulating issues and perhaps understanding how, leadership develops and become better leaders. Of course, the more trained you are, the better. Okay. So, you've worked for a number of organizations. I think we had a conversation off the set where you told me you worked for Focus, for example. I think was that after campus, and or it was within the campus scenario. Tell us a little bit about your working with the Focus and Kenya Christian Professional Forum, where you did some bit of work there.
Yes. Focus was within campus. I was privileged to serve in leadership positions within campus, the Christian Union setup. And so after serving as the chairperson of the Christian Union in the campus I was in, the Lord allowed me to also serve at the regional level. Focus is a fellowship of Christian unions that brings together Christian unions in universities and institutions of higher learning. So after serving as the chairperson of the Christian Union in my campus, I served at the regional level and also at the national level within Focus. So that was a good opportunity for me to learn, what really leadership is, because you might be confined in a small environment that does not let you explore opportunities to exert that leadership. And after that, I also did some work. It was an internship at Kenya Christian Professionals Forum. It is a body that brings together professionals to engage in matters of leadership, of governance, matters that are core, to the Christian and to the issues that are surrounding us. So Kenya Christian Professionals Forum is it's a very wonderful way for professionals, Christian professionals, to engage in governance, in matters of life, in matters of family, in matters of media, and it's something that I will encourage professionals out there to really plug in.
Okay.
Yes, so that and I've also worked in some other corporate areas that are not entirely Christian.
Okay.
But I was also exerting myself as a Christian in those in those places.
I was actually going to ask you.
Yes.
You know, I mean, in the I would consider it a short time. I think you've been in the professional space for 5 years. Like I think I noticed from your profile.
Yes.
So. What challenges have you experienced? I mean, you've exposed yourself. Being a lawyer, you tell me that you go to court.
Yes.
You represent your clients, whether it's in court or you're doing paperwork or something like that, or serving them without necessarily having to go to court. So far, what challenges have you experienced? You know, trying to play in that field, professional field, legal field, as a Christian.
One of the major challenges, aside from you know the ordinary challenges that you know are not unique to any Christian, that of working our own salvation.
Yes.
One of the major challenges I've experienced is standing for Christ in places where that is really needed.
Yes.
And in the society that we live in, it is very important for us to come out and give reasons for what we believe in.
Okay.
And in my profession, especially, that is very critical.
Okay.
Because there is a great temptation for compromise.
Okay.
Because the way things have been structured over time, you find that the systems do not really support justice.
Okay.
So as a Christian, you find yourself in a position where you have to go against the system most of the time.
Okay.
You have to go against the structures that have been put in place for decades.
Yes.
And so that involves sometimes sacrificing money. Sometimes that involves, you know, giving away clients that want to play a different tune from what you are doing.
Yes.
So there's a lot of sacrifice.
Okay.
And if you are not ready to bear the cost,
okay.
if you are not ready to, you know, give that sacrifice,
okay.
then you will be drawn by the current. And I would liken it to, you know, swimming in waters that are infested by sharks.
Okay.
And you are required to go against the current.
Okay.
It's not just enough to to swim in those waters, but you're also exerting your energies to go against the current.
That's true.
That is the greatest challenge.
Okay.
And that also coupled with the fact that you're in a space where you have other Christians, and it will be assumed that, you know, other Christians would encourage you forward in in the way that you should go, but there's a lot of compromise even in some Christians in such spaces.
Okay.
And so you find yourself trying to balance between charting your own cause,
yes,
and also you know, rebuking, encouraging your brothers and sisters to go the straight and narrow path.
Absolutely.
Yes. But the Lord has been faithful.
That's good. And then also being a role model and modeling it out for others, so that then you can have an impact. Wow, that's well said. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you follow this conversation, I want you to know that sometimes leadership requires sacrifices. Leadership requires that you chart your own path. Sometimes you may have to stand on your own against the current. And so that's very, very important. So we are debating the issue of leadership in crisis. We're looking at some of the underlying issues that influence leadership, especially in times of crisis. And we have a crisis in our economic system right now at the moment. And I'm going to be asking Bwana Mwangale to comment. Kenyans are facing very uncertain economic times. I think the COVID-19, which now is COVID-21, you know, I mean, yes, we started, it was labeled 19 because it actually showed up December 2019. And then, of course, it's exploded in 2020. And now we are in 2021, almost a year plus.
Yes.
We've been dealing with this pandemic, and then of course that also has had very huge implications in terms of the economics. We had to the economy had to be shut down for some time, and people have lost jobs.
Yes.
And here now we have another crisis, a crisis in the energy sector with the rising fuel prices.
Yes.
So What do you think is behind this development? So that's really the big question I want us to address ourselves to. What do you think is behind this development?
First, governments across the world have been, charting new courses, especially since 2020, because this was a new thing, and you had leaders across the world innovating, coming up with the new ideas that would cushion their citizens. And it has been a tough time.
Yes.
But I thank God that for a country like ours, we have managed to navigate through, and right now we are not at a very bad place compared to 2020, even though times are tough. Now, when it comes to the fuel prices, there are two things that have contributed to this hike. First, we have the global prices. I remember in 2020, there was a time when the price of oil went drastically down. Because when the economies were shutting down, there was less demand. And then that meant that, those who were producing could only sell the oil at very reduced prices. I think there was a point where the price of a barrel was about $30 or so. And that translated to a liter is very little. So coming from that state to right now, when governments are now opening up, the economies are now opening up, the demand has risen. So when the demand rises, definitely, the prices will go up. The supply would increase.
Simple economics. So there is the demand element. And you're showing how it has shifted.
Yes, exactly. That is one, which was bound to shake up things a little bit in this year. Number two, there are some issues regarding geopolitics that have also contributed to these fluctuations in oil prices. In Yemen has been very unstable for a very long time. And we've had rebels. They are called the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They have been, attacking the oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a large producer of oil, and their production dictates, oil prices most of the time. So those attacks have contributed to the volatility in oil prices, and they're bound to continue. So we are likely to see, a spike or a fluctuation in oil prices. So globally, those are the two things that have contributed to the spike. But coming to our local circumstances, where now the price globally does not really match, the pump prices.
Obviously,
in our country. I would point it to three things. One, when that fuel is imported, there is something called the landing cost, what is paid by the importer, so that by the time the oil reaches our port, it is bought at a certain amount. And per liter, we are at petrol is at about 49 shillings or so.
Landing
prices. But by the time that fuel gets to your pump, there are certain markups. So the importer has made their profit. The distributors are also making their profit. And that has something to do with transportation costs and whatnot. But in addition to that, you also have government taxes. There are specific levies that the government places on the oil. And that is very huge. In our case, the least that the government gets from petrol, for example, is about 53 shillings. So if you consider a landing cost of 49 shillings or 46 shillings, adding about 12 or so shillings, up to about 15 shillings for the markups, in terms of business economics, and then adding the 53 shillings that is earned by government, it gets you to where we are right now. So what has led to a spike in our circumstances is the government taxes on the petroleum imports.
And while we are on the taxes bit, because a kind of we'll come to some of the comments that are flying around. While we are on taxes, we remember last year there was, I don't know what you think about this. Last year, the government, due to COVID, there was a kind of a moratorium. The government actually did reduce tax, knock off. The VAT was knocked from 16 to 14. I think corporate tax was knocked from 30 to 25. We are talking about percentages. and all that. So there was a kind of like a cushioning
Yes.
that was instituted when the government said that it wanted to take action. And but then that was reversed, I think, sometime in February.
Yes.
Was it February? I think it was
early this year.
early this year. So it was instituted, and even pay as you earn, which
Yes.
had also been reduced. People are now paying higher. People are earning less in terms of salary. If your salary hasn't been increased at all,
Yes.
and it's been constant since 2020, some part of 2020, people were earning slightly more. And now 2021, and it goes down, and then fuel prices goes up.
Yes.
What do you think? Is that the source of discomfort and confusion?
Well, I think even in the circumstances we were in pre-2020,
Yes.
these hikes will still have caused the ripples that it's causing.
Yeah.
But it's true. What you say is very true. That there was a shock, after being cushioned for a while, and then that cushion is removed immediately.
Yes.
That shock will definitely be felt.
Okay.
And in my view, I do not think that it was wise for the government to remove the cushions immediately.
Yes.
There should have been gradual increases.
Okay.
Because when you are coming out of such tough economic times as 2020 was,
Yes.
you need, as a government, to provide that kind of cushioning for your citizens.
Okay.
But we are in a state where the government is balancing between the interests of the citizen and the interests of international monetary institutions, because we are trying to meet some conditions that have been set for us by the IMF, by the World Bank, and some of those people we owe.
Yes.
Because we have to restructure our loans, we have to renegotiate payments.
Yes.
And to do that, we must demonstrate that we have ways of raising revenue. So there's that balance.
Okay.
And unfortunately, when the government is trying to strike that balance, it is the citizen who is suffering.
Okay.
And now the oil prices are going to contribute to, even tougher times, because the oil prices have a trickle-down effect to the price of goods.
Yeah,
I was
price
just
of
looking
goods.
at the consumer price index for last month.
Yeah.
And the rate of inflation has been steadily rising for the last several months.
Okay.
And it goes to show that by the time we get to June, when we'll now be looking at the budget for 2021, 2022, things will be tougher.
Okay.
So we should brace ourselves for tough economic times, because I foresee a situation where inflation will rise to about 6.1 in this month, 6 point something in the month of April, and so on.
Okay.
So those are the times that we are living in. The government should have done more, but unfortunately we are not seeing that from their end.
Okay. So we have identified a number of variables. There's the crude oil prices.
Yes.
The geopolitical issues,
Yes.
the volatilities, for example, in the Middle East, the Yemen issues and others that would influence the volatility of the pricing. And then there is the issue of the domestic here. In the domestic arena, you've said there are three issues.
Yes.
One of them is the tax, the tax bait.
Yes.
The other one is the policy,
Yes, policy.
policy issues, plus some of the other multilateral conditions,
Yes.
conditionalities that are rising,
Yes.
because we still have to service our debts, our
Yeah.
economy has to keep functioning. Is there something else that could be behind the crisis that we are seeing in terms of in this particular sector?
If I may just touch on policy, because policy is a huge part of it. In 2008, when Kiraitu Murungi was Minister for Energy at that time, he gazetted regulations. They were called the Energy Reserve Stock Regulations.
Okay.
And in those regulations, the government, through the then National Oil Corporation, was supposed to purchase oil to cover about 3 months supply. That was the reserve stock that the government was looking at.
Yeah.
It was then approved by Parliament.
Okay.
After that, we have not had a deliberate effort by government to handle reserves. That's the way we have strategic reserves, food reserves.
Yes.
To cushion the country in case of famine, for example, or when we have low production.
Actually, we have strategic reserves in terms of food. Now you're saying strategic reserves in terms of fuel, and there are also strategic reserves in terms of foreign currency.
Yes.
For example, I know the central bank normally has what they call month cover, like about 5 months cover of hard currency, US dollars, pounds and whatever other hard currencies are needed, that should we stop receiving hard currencies in our economy, we can survive for 5 months.
Yes, yes.
So you're saying there was a similar policy, regulation on the oil sector as well?
Yes, and I would blame the breakdown of that policy on the arms of government, and in this case, Parliament.
Yes.
Because Parliament is supposed to oversight, Parliament is supposed to provide those checks.
Okay.
But we have a case where, and this is the unfortunate reality that we are in, that most of our parliamentarians are up and about doing politics every day, every weekend.
Okay.
And the real issues of legislation and oversight are not carried out.
Okay.
Because we have parliamentary committees. We have a parliamentary committee on energy.
Okay.
Just the other day, I saw the chairman of the committee saying they were going to summon the cabinet secretary.
Okay.
After the fact, after we have already had this.
After the prices have gone up, now we're going to summon.
Yes. And this knee-jerk reactions do not really help.
Okay.
Because if we would have maintained that strategic stock reserve of oil, then we would be looking at a situation where there would be a spike in oil prices.
Yes.
But because we would have bought the oil at lower prices, say for example in 2020 when the prices were so low, we bought reserves for several months.
Okay.
Then we would be at a place where the prices are going up, yes, but we are not really feeling the shocks because we have something in store.
Yeah, we can delay the pay.
Yes.
And we can cushion mwananchi.
Yes.
In terms of, and it doesn't become a crisis that now you have to buy now.
Yes.
And you have to buy at the asking prices. Wow, what amazing, amazing. So those of you that are following this conversation, you realize there is quite a lot of things that are behind some of these crises you see in the energy sector. Perhaps energy sector is more significant because it actually influences other sectors. For example, if fuel prices go up, diesel and petrol and other things, then that has a trickle-down effect and ripple effect, which then affect the other sectors, transport, food production, manufacturing, and all that. Okay, so we're going to take a break for now, and when we come back, we're going to look at some of the reactions we've seen in the public, some of the people that are reacting to this, and I'm going to read for you some of the reactions, and then we'll ask Mr. Mwangare to comment on them, and then we take the conversation forward. So stay tuned, don't go away. We go for a break, we'll come back shortly.
Her from this. Can you even hear me?
This is my fight song. Take back my life.
So you're telling me that when this baby girl fell 30 feet, she hit her head just right, and it didn't kill her, and it didn't paralyze her. It healed her.
Yes.
He told me I'd be fine. I've still got a lot of fight left.
Who told you you'd be fine?
In me.
When you hear a lot of youth speak, it is about, our rights as youth, create jobs for the youth.
Yes.
We are not really talking about the country, because you will not be a youth forever.
You can say that again.
Yes. So if you're complaining about, what are you doing for the youth? The youth need to be given this, the youth need this and this, as opposed to looking at what would benefit for the country. Because for me, when I'm talking about these things, I'm not just looking at myself. I'm looking at my children. I'm looking at what I would leave my grandchildren, because I have to leave an inheritance for them.
All right, welcome to the Gigi Report. We're glad you're tuned in, and we're having a very interesting conversation today. We're talking about leadership in times of crisis, and we are discussing the current economic crisis that has been, triggered by a huge rise in fuel prices, which obviously is in the public domain. A lot of people are commenting and wondering what's going on. Bwana Mwangale.
Yes.
Now, I want to give you some bit of feedback. Yesterday, but I decided to post something small on my Facebook page, just to kind of gauge what people are thinking about, because you see these very alarming headlines, and you're like, okay, so what's going on? So what I did is I asked a question on my Facebook page, and the question was, or the comment was, if the government removed price controls, because people need to understand that actually we have a price-controlled regime in terms of in the energy sector. So if the government removed price controls on petroleum products, would Kenyans be paying more or less than current prices? And you'll be very surprised, Bwana Mwangale, what's some of the the comments I got. Somebody said, some gentleman called James Mwangi said, definitely less, so they think we'll pay less. Somebody else, of course, the same guy kind of thought about 49% of the current prices are taxes, which probably is almost near that. The other conversation, and I want you to comment on these things, is fuel in Uganda is 109. I'm sure you've heard this. You've seen this on the social media. Fuel in Uganda is shillings 109. In Rwanda is shillings 101. And their fuel passes through Kenya. What is happening to us? So somebody thinks that somebody is playing us up on this. Somebody else thinks would pay more if the price controls were removed. So something would pay less, others think would pay more. So having looked at some of the things, like we were talking about the legislative ineptitude, so to speak. Our parliamentarians are not doing their job. So, and people think that actually we'll probably, if the price controls were removed, we'll pay less. Others think we'll pay more. We'll pay more. So could you comment on that, and what's your take?
I think there are two things. If the price control was removed and the government was still levying the taxes they are, then it will definitely be higher. But if the price controls were removed and we were living in a deregulated market and the government was not levying as much tax as it is, or none at all, then we would be definitely paying less. So it's a balance of those two things. But in the situation we are in, it's almost as though we are in a deregulated oil market. Because if you have the oil importers and oil marketing companies known as OMCs making a small amount in terms of profit. And you have a government that is making an almost open-ended, profit from this importation. Then it is similar to a deregulated market. Because then you would imagine that if you're in a deregulated market, then it will be the business people who would be making those incent profits. So it is good that we are in a state of price control, and price control did not begin, a very long time ago.
Okay.
The ERC, what now became the Energy, Petroleum and Regulatory Authority, started, controlling prices just a little over 10 years ago.
Okay. Yes, it's true. Yeah.
And before that, we really did not have huge spikes in in oil prices.
Okay.
There was an economic and business understanding between oil marketers and oil companies on what amounts they were supposed to make.
Okay.
And this is the reason, because the ERC then, the Energy Regulatory Commission, had only licensed a few companies to do the importation.
Okay.
And that is what is happening currently. I think there are now about 9 companies that are licensed to import the oil.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I would also mention that I think that is a problem that we could address.
Okay.
Because in my view, I think it would be better if the government was doing the importation.
Okay.
As opposed to the open tender system that we are having, where these, licensed companies are doing the importation.
Okay.
So the government will import at a specific set price, and then that is on behalf of, the oil marketers.
Okay.
And then they would then take it up at distribution level.
Okay.
So it is good that we are regulated, but we must address these small issues that are causing these spikes.
Okay. Of course, a lot of people have, opinions on in terms of which is better.
Yes.
The current policy regime, or there are fine-tuning that could be done, and of course, they are experts in that field.
Yes.
Do you think there is something about the fact that I noticed that we import our crude oil from or fuels from UAE exclusively. I noticed that's where we get all our crude oil.
Yes.
Is there a chance that maybe we have signed up some very long-term agreements there, or whoever imports have signed up such a long-term agreement, and that their hands are tied? So when the prices go up, they don't have an alternative.
Yes.
Do you think that that could be a factor?
That is a large factor. Most countries that are able to manage, the volatility of global oil prices have diversified the market from which they import the oil.
Okay.
So if you have, for example, countries that are importing from Iran, they're also importing from, UAE, Saudi Arabia,
Kuwait.
Yes, Kuwait.
Yeah.
That diversity gives you options.
Okay.
So, for example, you'd be getting Kuwait selling, or exporters from Kuwait selling their oil at a certain price that is slightly below the global price per barrel. And that gives you, varied options.
Okay.
So for us to be tied down to specific contracts, and this is what happens. Now, the 9 importers I've mentioned have signed contracts.
Okay.
So if you tinker around with those contracts, you'd be sued. You'd pay a lot of money.
You are a lawyer, you know that.
Because there is a legitimate expectation that because they have signed these contracts, they have to keep importing the oil for a certain period of time.
That's true.
So that is not bound to change right now. But government should look at diversifying our import market.
Okay.
One of the things that is unfortunate, and again our unfortunate reality, is most of the people who are tasked with decision making are easily corruptible.
Okay. That's true. And I want us to go there because we want to look at the leadership part of this whole conversation, because we really want to see where now leadership comes in. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're following this conversation, there are the contact numbers on the screen running, or on the below the screen there. If you have comments, you can send a text, you can call, and just give us your opinion on what you think is going on. Those of you watching on social media, you're free to leave a comment on the Facebook or the YouTube channel that you're using. And please stay tuned and keep following the conversation, and let's hear what you have to say about this. So, Philip, I think this now brings in the issue of leadership, governance, ethics, and the other issues that are around leaders' ability to take responsibility. Because based on that little kind of quasi-survey. I wouldn't call it a real serious survey.
Yes.
But there is that sense in which people seem to really distrust our public servants, the leaders.
Yes.
You know, of course, the person that everybody mentions first is Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yes.
You know, Uhuru Kenyatta is to blame for the prices, and he's squeezing us up, and he's up to no good. You know, and he's trying to raise. Actually, one of the accusations, he's trying to raise money to fund BBI or pay MPs, bribe them so that they can approve BBI. So you can see how murky the situation is. What's the role of leadership in all this?
It's John Maxwell that says everything rises and falls with leadership.
Okay.
We might talk about these other things, policy and how the technical aspects are run.
Yeah.
But it is leadership that carries the day.
Okay.
And mentioning that, I would now that we constantly refer to the presidency.
Yes.
In this case.
Yes.
The presidency plays a large role in giving direction.
Okay.
Because a lot of policies developed at the cabinet level, and then it is disseminated down to implementation.
Okay.
So the reason why people, mention the president,
they defy all our problems.
Yes, it's because that is where leadership begins.
Yes.
And I think we've had people comparing the leadership of Uhuru Kenyatta to the leadership of Mwai Kibaki in terms of economic and fiscal policy.
Yes.
And there's a stark difference because Kibaki was an economics man, and there are some things that could not just pass by him. So one of the things that I have identified is a huge problem is on the part of decision making.
Okay.
One author, very wonderful Christian author called Dr. John Stanko.
Okay.
He has written a book. The title is actually it's long, but it's a good title. He says there are so many leaders but little leadership.
Okay.
Because I think that is what we're having. We're having people occupying leadership positions.
Yes.
But offering leadership.
Okay.
Is actually lacking.
Okay.
One of the things that is unfortunate is the fact that we have people in offices, people who do not have the capacity to generate the technical expertise that is required.
Okay.
You'd speak to people, and in this case we're talking about economic policy, you'd speak to individuals who have the experience, who have the expertise, but they're not within these offices.
Okay.
So the place of decision making is largely an issue when it comes to policy in government.
Okay.
I think over time we have gotten to a scenario where some people in these positions do not listen. And when they listen to the wrong people.
Okay.
Because we really have public servants who are really passionate about this country, who are very patriotic.
Yes.
But often they are not given an opportunity to be heard.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
that is a problem.
I think we need to emphasize that at the point of decision making,
yes,
the people who influence those decision making are not necessarily the most technically competent people.
Yes.
There are obviously people who are technically competent, who, for example, either were given a forum, they would say, all you need is to tweak this policy, remove this, fix this here, shift this.
Yes.
But then they don't have the opportunity to be at the decision-making level.
Yes.
And some of the key decision-making level, platform you're saying, of course, is the executive, the presidency, the executive, and then, of course, legislative parliament. And parliament doesn't seem to be attractive. It attracts a lot of lawyers, by the way. What do you have to say about that?
It does, but you see, I have come to the conclusion that it's not really the profession that defines the individual.
Yes.
There's a lot of substance behind the person that should actually define that individual. So yes, it does attract lawyers, but what caliber? what caliber of lawyers? There are, by the way, very good lawyers who are in parliament.
Okay.
But there are some who are driven by other nefarious agenda.
Okay.
So that is also a problem. And the capacity of parliament has been in question for a very long time.
Okay.
One of the reasons is that people get into parliament, and because we have had systemic socioeconomic issues, they will get into parliament, but when they get back to the people, they will tell us of how they are building toilets in schools, classrooms. Those are good things, by the way.
Yes.
They are contributing in harambes, in funerals, good things.
Yes.
But that is not their job.
Yes.
Their principal job is legislation, oversight, and checking the excesses of the arms of government.
Okay.
So if they are not participating in doing that, then we have a problem. And for the last 10 years or so, I would go as far as 15 years. We've had an issue of capacity within Parliament.
Okay.
That is a problem that we must address going forward. I mean, when we are electing leaders, yes, we are in a place where people get as little as 50 shillings and 100 shillings to elect somebody into office, but we must look at the future.
Okay, so I think what we need to tell our viewers, those of you that are following this conversation, while it's so easy to throw stones and blame everyone and think, oh well, the executive is being strong-armed and the government is squeezing taxes out of us and exploiting us, we actually perhaps have a significant part of that blame, because we are involved in somewhat in electing leaders, especially in parliament.
Yes.
And we carry responsibility for putting the right people in those places of decision making. So I guess that's one of the takeaway from us. And so you see that, look, we need to pay attention to the fact that we need a very, very strong parliament.
Yes.
We need to have leaders within those spaces that have the capacity to make decisions, and to focus on their role specifically. I had a guest here on the show who actually did talk about the fact that there is a lot of effort going into building the capacity, legislative capacity of people who go to parliament. Because people show up in parliament, and basically they're just wonderful people. They are good politicians. They mean well. They are passionate, but they lack the technical capacity, and there is need for that. Very good. I like what you mentioned about leadership. Too many leaders, too little leadership.
Yes.
And so one of them you've said is at the point of decision making. Lack of capacity. What's the other issues that you would say are plaguing our leadership and perhaps letting some of these crises plague us?
One other thing that I would mention is the place of action.
Yes.
Because it is wonderful to talk about these things, and you'd hear politicians and citizens alike. We have wonderful discussions. we can hold hours of conversations about the things that concern us.
Yeah.
But there is the point of translating the conversation into action.
Okay.
For me, there are three stages. One is moving from concern to conversation, and then moving conversation into action.
Okay.
So we are stuck at the place of conversations.
Yes.
If you invite these politicians to the wonderful conferences that we hold around the year, and you hear them speak, wow, they give wonderful speeches.
Yes.
You'd imagine that these are the right people for the job.
Okay.
But moving from the point of conversation, because conversation excites. I mean, when you're talking about things that concern you, it's excitable.
Okay.
But then the place of action demands sacrifice.
Okay.
And leadership, one of the the biggest responsibilities of leadership is to make sacrifices for the things that leadership stands for.
Okay.
And that would include sacrificing, political factions, which most of our politicians are not ready to do, because in the places where they should make stern decisions, they are held back by, their political parties, the people they owe allegiance to, and those manner of things.
Yes.
So we must really move from the place of conversation to action.
Okay.
And that will take a lot of sacrifice.
Okay. All right. So this, and when you talk about sacrifice, sacrifice is a Christian motive. I mean, it's related to the servant leadership.
Yes.
Jesus himself did say that whoever wants to be the first among you must be servant of all.
Yes.
And so it's a very Christian idea of somebody seeing themselves not just as a leader who holds power, but as a servant of the people.
Yes.
Very good. Now, I want you to, you like we said earlier in the conversation, you fall in the category of the younger generation.
Yes.
You're I would consider that you are in the younger generation. I'm in the a little bit older generation.
Yes.
Do you think that there is some kind of challenge? What's the challenge with your generation? Because what I see constantly, especially in the social media, is a lot of cynicism
Yes.
and a lot of skepticism about leadership, and almost to the level of what I would call resentment. People resenting leaders. Is it that people feel so let down by leaders and feel so, you will never get anything out of these leaders of ours? What exactly is happening? And if that's the case, some kind of cynicism, resentment, and apathy on the part of the younger generation,
Yes.
what will that mean for future generations of leaders?
One of the things, I would start by borrowing what Paul tells Timothy, and to an extension us, that in the last days men shall be lovers of themselves, they shall be boastful, and all those things.
Yes.
But I will stick to men being lovers of themselves.
Yeah.
I think one of the things
Yeah.
that plagues the youthful generation today is selfishness.
Okay.
Because there's a point where you can support your fellow young person who has capacity and who has expertise in a certain area,
Yeah.
but because you want to be forward,
Yes.
it's sort of a race, it's a competition. You want to be ahead of the other person.
Yes.
You are equating yourself to the next person.
Okay.
That has led to a scenario where you do not have youth forging a united front.
Okay.
Not really for themselves,
Yeah.
but really for the country.
Okay.
And that is again what is lacking. When you hear a lot of youth speak, it is about our rights as youth, create jobs for the youth.
Yes.
We are not really talking about the country, because you will not be a youth forever.
You can say that again.
So if you're complaining about what are you doing for the youth?
Okay.
The youth need to be given this, the youth need this and this, as opposed to looking at what would benefit for the country. Because for me, when I'm talking about these things, I'm not just looking at myself. I'm looking at my children. I'm looking at what I would leave my grandchildren,
Yeah.
because I have to leave an inheritance for them.
Yes.
So if I am more concerned about what should accrue to me,
Yes.
then I'm losing the point.
Okay.
And that is a problem that we have with the youthful generation. So if we really got out of our nests, the nests that we have created for ourselves,
Yeah.
if we really stopped competing against each other, if we became more patriotic,
Yes.
because I think if I may compare that with your generation and older, when people were fighting for example, multipartyism and the freedoms that we enjoy, they were not doing so because they were young people.
Yes.
They were doing it because they had a love for country.
Yes.
They were really passionate about where this country was headed.
Exactly.
You'd hardly hear people saying, as young people we are calling for this. They were just citizens.
Okay.
And it's just coincidental that the things they were fighting for were benefits to them because they were young.
Okay.
Number two, one of the things that has contributed to the cynicism is the hopelessness and despair
Yeah.
that has been around for a while.
Yeah.
We have cases, a huge unemployment base.
Okay.
So you have youth who are largely unemployed, and so they don't care.
Yes.
It has gotten to that point where we don't care about leadership. I mean, say what you want to say. We have sort of accepted our place, and the only thing we can do.
And you've refused with our jobs.
Yes, is the only, and I think this is the problem that we have. We joke ourselves into forgetfulness.
Okay.
We have a very serious issue, but we joke around with that issue, and it disappears.
Okay.
So one of the things that the youth need to do,
Yes.
is as opposed to cynicism, let us engage in governance. Because
Absolutely.
we have a great opportunity to engage leaders. One.
Yes, yes.
Not just look for those positions. They are good, by the way,
Yeah.
for you to get into elective position and whatnot.
Yeah.
But for the leadership that is there presently,
Yes.
engage with that leadership. First, we must decide that
Yeah.
we should not be used by politicians.
Yes.
We complain a lot after people are elected into office.
Yeah.
But if you go back to the ballot,
Yes.
youth, a large percentage of this country.
Yes.
But who is used in violence during elections? It is the youth.
Yes.
Who is used for, very flimsy campaigns and those kinds of propaganda. It is the youth.
Yes.
So we contribute a lot to the problems that we have and then complain
yes.
after, those problems have come to life. And if I borrow Solomon's wise words, he says you cannot take up fire in your bosom and not expect to get burned.
Absolutely, absolutely, Philip. Yes. I like what you're talking about, and we are about to wrap up this conversation. And I like the idea that young people need to look at themselves, reflect on their own contribution, because we cannot just be complaining about people out there who are manipulating things against us, yes. our wishes and all that, while we are not looking at the mirror and looking at ourselves and asking ourselves how much of that has been contributed by our own inaction.
Yes.
You mentioned something of the set about participation, the idea of citizen participation.
Yes.
So do you feel like the youth, even though they are talking, but they are not sufficiently participating? So you could mention that as we wrap up this, yes. and maybe what message you would have for the young people out there.
One of the unfortunate places we have found ourselves in is the fact that, the youth, and not just the youth, the citizen of today in this country considers Twitter and social media, their platform of engagement.
Yes.
If it is not trending, then it does not mean anything.
Yes.
And we sort of think that when we make noise on Twitter because it has achieved certain results in the past, then we actually, engaging leadership.
Okay.
But that is not the place where we should be engaging our
Some
minds.
of these guys don't even bother looking at those
they don't bother. And sometimes it's just because, we have made so much noise and maybe they are merciful. Wamepiga kelele sana. Let us give them what they want.
Yes.
But there are specific places where we need to engage. One, okay. As low as the county governments,
yes,
you need to engage in legislation in the county assemblies,
yes.
because we have opportunities for public participation.
Yes.
You need to engage in matters of policy. If the county government is issuing policy that you do not agree with, you can raise the voice, you can raise queries, you can raise complaints, and engage leadership at that level. Okay. And that cascades down up to the national platform.
Okay.
There are times we have publications and notices for people to engage in public participation on bills,
yes.
and regulations,
yes.
but they largely go unanswered.
Okay.
One of the reasons for that is that because people are caught up in a rat race, an employment rat race, so you don't care what happens so long as you're chasing your salary, and you largely leave issues of governance to politicians.
Absolutely.
So that engagement must be very key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this program, I think it's clear that while we have reason to complain and feel like the economic situation is really not, it's so volatile, it's so uncertain, we don't know what's going to happen next, maybe the fuel prices might even go higher and all that. One of the key ways we can, do something about this is to participate in some of these programs that, policy-related legislative issues. And we miss that information because we're too busy on other things. So it is up to us, like Philip, you're saying, for the young people to begin to engage, to wake up and pay attention. These things get published. There are calls for participation, yes. in some of these policies. Most policies have to go through a public participation. But young people are missing in those conversations, and some of the people that are complaining on the social media, you're missing in the conversation. Christians too are missing in that conversation. So, Philip, in 30 seconds, what do you have to tell the young people in 30 seconds, your parting shot?
My parting shot is this, that young people need to arise out of slumber, and do not think that there is anyone who is working for your good. You have to arise and work, not just for your own self, but for the sake of this country, for the sake of your children, and for the sake of your children's children. Because if we don't do that, then a large blame will be laid on us for not taking action when we should have taken action.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's all we had time for on this episode of the Gigi Report. I've been your host, Godfrey Gishoke, and thank you for staying tuned in. We look forward to the next program. God bless you, and bye for now.